It is my pleasure to welcome you today to this presentation, All Roads Lead to Rome. Understanding is the key in successful CRM. I'm Gill Walker and I'm going to explain to you today why understanding is key in successful CRM. Have you been aware of, or perhaps even been involved in, a CRM project that did not deliver as much as was expected? Perhaps the return on investment, ROI, was lower than you'd expected, or even the return on effort was less than you'd been led to believe. If you're like any of my clients, the answer to that question will be a resounding yes. What do you think is the failure rate in CRM and ERP projects? Certainly it does vary, and it will vary depending on what you read. And there are some very different numbers out there. But in one study done in 2019, the failure rate was it 50%? That would be pretty hideous. Was it 75%? That's getting really quite scary. The actual recorded failure rate for CRM and ERP projects, according to that particular survey, was a whopping 85%. If you needed surgery, how would you feel if there was an 85% failure rate with your surgeon, the team, the operation, the hospital, or some other aspect of the procedure that you were thinking of having? Several years ago, when I was working in India, one of my colleagues said that in his experience, CRM implementations require 3 attempts to get them right. 3 attempts. That the first 2, while they may well go live, are regarded by many organisations as learning exercises. The 2019 Digital Transformation Survey, which is where that 85% failure rate came from, also found that between 51 and 54% experience operational disruption when going live with a CRM and ERP project. What that means is that they are unable to invoice, unable to ship products, they maybe can't close their books at the end of a financial period, or they can't perform some other essential function at the time that they expect to be able to do it. Add to that many organisations find that the increase on the initial cost, or the increase on the quoted cost, is somewhere between 50% and 300%. So what that means is if you have budgeted 100,000 for your CRM or ERP project, your actual costs will be on average somewhere between 150,000 and $300,000. I have to admit, I find that pretty scary. So why does it happen? Another survey that I read about said that there are 25 reasons for CRM failure. You'll see the 25 reasons that this survey that was done last year identified as purported causes of CRM failure. I'm not going to go through all of these 25 reasons in any detail. What I would rather do is group them. And this graph shows a grouping of those 25 reasons. You can see that 44% of those reasons, so 11 of those reasons on the previous slide, it is an overt lack of understanding. But I would like to suggest that in actual fact, all 25 of those reasons, when we drill into them, come down to a lack of understanding. So after that 44%, we've got 20%, so 5 of those reasons, where there are issues with the personnel involved in the project. And that is things like the people don't understand their roles, they don't have the skills to do the job that they're being asked to do. A further 20% are the project objectives. So again, that comes down to understanding what can we expect a CRM project to do for us? Where are the low-hanging fruit? What can we achieve quickly? And other related issues. Then 2 of those reasons, 8%, relate to the data in the system. And the final 2 reasons are that the project had a lack of customer focus. In other words, all of the implementation was done thinking about the organisation, not about the customers. And let's face it, CRM, customer relationship management, is all about your customers. So I would suggest that in fact, all of the causes of project failure are a lack of understanding somewhere in the project. That is why I say all roads lead to Rome. I'd now like to take a few minutes and go in a little more detail about what, in my opinion, are the top 6 reasons for CRM failure from the 25, and talk about why each of those can be put down to a lack of understanding. So there's the 6 reasons that I'm going to focus on. Lack of user adoption is when the users either can't or won't use the solution as implemented. And typically that happens because for the job that the users have to get done, their old way of working either is quicker, is simpler, is better, or is perceived to be simpler, quicker, or better. And it doesn't matter really whether it is really simpler, easier, or better, or simply perceived to be. Regardless, that is a lack of understanding, either by the users themselves or perhaps by the people who decided the scope that needed to be implemented. Sometimes the lack of user adoption is quite simply because the users don't know how to do their job using the new technology. And that, of course, is lack of training. And so again, a lack of training can be put down to an overt lack of understanding. Users will always struggle to do their job using the system if they can't trust the data that is in the system. A few years ago, I was working for a client who sent out lumpy mail or physical mail. The first time they did a mail out after the new CRM had gone live, they had a huge number of return to sender. And that happened because so many of the addresses in the CRM solution were not accurate. And once there's been an experience like that, the users will likely go back to their own way of tracking the information rather than using CRM. If CRM is considered a one-time thing, that will not work for you. Your business is bound to be evolving, and the technology is evolving. The current SaaS products, many of them are pushing out new functionality monthly and sometimes even more frequently than that. So we've got an evolving business and an evolving technology. How can we possibly have CRM? Has to be seen as a journey. Scope creep. Scope creep is undoubtedly a big cause of that budget blowout that I alluded to earlier. Scope creep happens when somebody or a group of somebodies decided that what the project needed was this amount of functionality. And then one way and another, that functionality went from there to there to there, and so we have got a much bigger scope. The more we implement at any one time, the more the project is going to cost. So definitely scope creep and allowing it to happen is again an overt lack of understanding. CRM as a solution sits on a knife edge between the business and technology. So although your IT department will always need to be involved, they can never be the sole custodian of the solution. So in my 20 years of working with CRM, actually it's over 20 years, it's closer to 30 years now, and well over 100 projects helping organisations to implement or re-implement CRM. These are the commonest reasons for project failure. So this is why I say all roads lead to Rome. Rome is the place where a civilization came to an end. The place where an empire falls over. The place where the Dark Ages began. And all the ways of getting to Rome come from a lack of understanding somewhere in the project. You definitely do not want to go to Rome. So given that, what is the solution? How do you avoid project failure? And I would argue that the answer to this is definitely education. By building education throughout the project, you prevent a lot of the lack of understanding that leads to all of those failures that we've looked at earlier. And education is not just end user training. That in itself is one of the problems that I see. Education involves a lot more, and it should include mentoring. So after you've done some training of some sort, after that, make sure that the people who were in that training are mentored so that they know and they get the opportunity to get their questions answered. If all of that education seems too expensive, think about the cost of a failed project. Remember that 50% to 300% budget blowout that I mentioned earlier. And all of that budget blowout in the US alone is costing $15 billion per year. So if we agree that education is a big part of the solution, what education should be included in a successful project? The first piece of education is awareness raising. And awareness raising education should happen at the beginning of the project, and it includes a wide range of things. It will include making sure that the people making the decisions about what's in and what's out, in other words, setting the scope, have got some knowledge of what the technology gives you out of the box. It will include how do you scope a project like this. And it will include educating people on more general levels of CRM. The next block of training is technical training. And this is making sure that all of your technical team know enough about all aspects of the technology so that the right decisions can be made when things are being implemented. One of the things that I hear quite frequently is we've got people with this bit of skill and another person with this bit of skill and another person and so on. The problem that arises when you've got the necessary skill split over a large number of people is that every time information gets passed from one person to another to apply their bit of knowledge, we run a big risk of key information being lost in translation. So educate your technical people so that they all have an understanding of the technical options. They might not know all of the detail and how to do everything, but they do understand those different technical options. Tester training, another piece of education that surprisingly frequently is omitted from the project. This is training your testers so that they know what to test, how to document their testing, why they are testing, and perhaps most importantly of all, what will happen if they don't test properly and thoroughly. And the final piece of education that I'd like to talk about is end user training. End user training is teaching your users how to do their job using the new system. That means that end user training needs to be based on your processes, your data, and your system. That means that end user training absolutely cannot be an off-the-shelf product. End user training has to be developed for your people using your system, your processes, and your data. There are organisations that try and sell end user training as an off-the-shelf product. What they are really selling is awareness raising training, i.e., what does this technology include out of the box unconfigured. That is not end user training. I'd now like to talk briefly about what I call the move to the middle model. Whenever you embark on a project like this, you have your business, and that business comprises the users. and of course the business requirements, whatever they may be. You also have a technology, whatever technology you have selected to help you in this project. And at the beginning, they will be sitting somewhat like that. What some people are tempted to do in their project is to force the technology all the way across so that whatever the business requirements are implemented with the technology. So there's almost no change in how the users operate. That rarely works. Another approach that is sometimes taken is we don't worry about the users and the processes. We will make the users change and take the technology pretty much as it comes. That will likely lead to poor user adoption, so is unlikely to be successful. Where I think you will get the greatest success is when you move both of these into the middle. So the business makes some changes, moving towards what the technology offers natively, and the technology is changed, moving that towards the business requirements. So we move both in towards the other. And that's why I call it the move to the middle model. However, to really use those ideas, we do need a lot of understanding. We need a decent number of people in the organisation who understand what the technology offers, and we need an understanding in the technical team of the business requirements, as well, of course, a broad understanding of the technology and the different options available within it. A lack of understanding is, as I've said, definitely a cause of problems. I apologise if I sound harsh and I seem like a doomsayer. I do not want to be threatening, but my goal is for you to have CRM success, and to have that CRM success as easily as possible, as least expensive as possible, and overall as successful as possible, because your business deserves it, your people deserve it, and your shareholders deserve it. If you would like my list of successful CRM techniques, my checklist, please email me. I would love to hear from you.